This video, I'm going to be covering exit grids in detail. We're going to look at how the mapper treats exit grids, how to get them to work properly, and how to define them in the system files so stuff doesn't constantly crash whenever you try to use them. This is going to be a long and detailed one, so get ready to hit that pause button if you need to. The first thing you need to know about exit grids in the mapper, only the green ones work. I'm not exactly sure what the deal is. None of the sources referencing exit grids that I've found explain why this is. The official instructions claim the black ones ended up being cut from the game, but the brown ones don't work either. Neither have the exit grid script attached to them when you place them, so it's not going to break your game or anything. These grids are just purely cosmetic. The second thing you need to know is, when you place a green exit grid down, only one hex in the exit grid actually does anything, and that's the highlighted hex you see when placing the grid. Now, once you place it and clear the selection, you'll see the highlight disappear and the whole exit grid is one color. This isn't the only way to see the exit grid hex though. Clicking the hexes button will toggle a blue highlight on that hex. The highlight is a little tough to see though, especially at higher resolutions, but it's there. Don't know why the devs thought the faded highlight was okay, but it's useful to tell if you have a solid line of blue exit grid hexes since, and this is important, only those blue hexes will move the character to a new spot, a new map, or the world map. These blue hexes right here. Very important, very necessary. One easy way to make a large exit grid is to use the copy command. You can copy a single row or column and click and drag to fill in as much as you want. Leave hexes mode on if you want to make sure you have a solid line of blue hexes. Okay, let's say you've lined up a set of exit grids properly and made sure there are no gaps in the blue exit tiles. Next, you'll probably want to tell the exit grids where to drop the player once they've walked on them. This part's a little bit tricky, but fairly straightforward once you know the process. There are two different directions you can go with an exit grid, to a town map or to the world map. Setting an exit grid to point to a town map takes several steps, and this is where things start to get complicated, so pause the video if you need to. First, we'll need several pieces of information. The name of the map you want the player to be transported to, the hex number that you want the player to spawn in on, and the level of the map you want the player to appear on. Find the map you want to send the player to and pick a spot where you want the player to spawn in. Personally, I'm going to have the player spawn on a special little tile I'm going to set up right here. I'm going to use this same map right here, and it is called QMAP.map, so I'm just going to write that name down. QMAP. The map level is the level number in the bottom left corner here, -1. As a result of the way the developers set up the exit grid info in the mapper, the level numbers for setting the exit grid info actually start at 0 instead of 1, whereas the mapper itself starts at level 1 instead of level 0. For myself, I want the character to spawn in on level 3, but because of the problem I just described, it's actually going to be level 2, because it starts at level 0, then goes to level 1, then level 2, instead of level 1, 2, and 3. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. It's an old programming eccentricity that many programmers still use, so just beware of it. And I'm going to have the character spawn in at this hex right here, which is going to be hex number 24349. Hex number 24349. Okay, we've got three pieces of information: the map name, the hex number we want the character to spawn in on, and the map level we want them to appear on. But we need one more piece to actually finish this, the map number. If you've created a new map, like I have, we need to add it to the MAPS.TXT file. If you're using the original game maps, we need to look its map number in MAPS.TXT as well. MAPS.TXT should be located in your modded Fallout 2 game under Fallout 2/data/data if you extracted it during the install process. If the file is missing from here, I have a video on setting up stuff that explains how to find and copy these system files to the right folder. The link should pop up in the corner here, but there'll be a link in the description too. On that install video, check the required file section for the specific instructions. Timestamp 7 minutes and 18 seconds. Okay, we've opened up the maps.txt file. Now, to find the number for a map already in here, just search for the map name and write down the map number associated with it. And if you don't remember the map name, you can usually look up the regular name since it's listed here too. A good practice to keep as we add our own map to this list. For instance, if I search for Arroyo, we could find the Arroyo Caves, and the Arroyo Village, and the music for Arroyo as well, and then Arroyo Bridge below it. And Arroyo Village is map number 004. To add a new map, go to the end of the text file, Control End, and add a new entry following the same format as the previous entries, just increase the number by 1. So we have map 150 here, we're going to add map number 151. This is another important note. Make sure all the map numbers on this list are sequential. Skipping a number will cause both the mapper and the game to crash when using the exit grid. Also, misspelling anything here will also cause it to crash. So be careful with it. And if it does crash, go back and check your MAPS.TXT file. Probably something wrong there. So for my brand new map, which I'm calling QMap for now, I'm going to add map number 151 to the end. The lookup name is the full name you want to call your map. The mapper forces you to use 8 characters when saving your map file, but here you can use up to 144. And I'm going to call mine Quantum's Map. The map name will be QMap, which is exactly the same as the file name for the map that you're trying to attach here. And these are the only 2 entries necessary to get your map to load and keep your exit grids from immediately crashing. The saved option determines if the map variables are saved after you leave the map and is also unnecessary, but deleting it or putting no will make it behave basically like a random encounter, which is what random best is. The map will reset every time you enter. Setting it to yes will change it to a town map where changes on the map are saved as you leave, and I'm going to set mine to yes because I want it to be a town map. There are a few other options you can add in, background music for instance, ambient noises, random starting points, allow or prevent the player from resting here, and whether or not dead bodies age are all the options I know of. Browse through the list of maps to see how they're formatted, or check out the wiki for a full description of the available commands. Link is also in the description if that doesn't appear here in the corner. I'll cover these in more detail in a separate video once I figure out how they work. For now, once you have your map number written down alongside the hex number, map level, and map name, including the lookup name, save any changes you made to MAPS.TXT and go back to the mapper. So my map number is going to be number 151 and the lookup name is Quantum's Map. And here's the map I'm working on. When you're ready, go to the Tools menu and select Set Exit Grid Data. The Exit Grid Destination map is the map number you wrote down. The Exit Grid Destination tile number is the hex number where you want the player to spawn, which for me is 24349. The Exit Grid Destination elevation is the map level, which should be 0, 1, or 2, again, instead of 1, 2, or 3. So in my case, it's level number 2. And the Exit Grid Destination rotation is the direction you want the player character to face, and that is the same number as the middle of the direction pointer in the taskbar down here. I'm going to leave mine at 0, but if you wanted to change it, you can just change the direction on the taskbar, look at the number, and then put that number in place of the 0. Now that you filled these out and set the exit grid you want to mark with this information, open the Tools menu again and select Mark Exit Grids. Mark All Exit Grids will do the same thing, except it'll just mark all of the exit grids on the map. This will put the mapper into what I guess could be called Mark Exit Grids mode. While in this mode, you can only mark exit grids, which sounds easy enough, except there isn't anything indicating that you're in Mark Exit Grids mode, which can lead to all sorts of confusion. If you end up in a situation where you can't place objects on the map, just remember to press Escape to exit this mode. Okay, let's get back into Mark Exit Grids mode, and let me show you a couple of details that took me a bit to figure out with this giant system of exit grids I've set up. First off, when you mark the grid you want while in Mark Exit Grids mode, a square-shaped swath of exit grids centered around the hex you clicked will be highlighted, 20 hexes wide and 20 hexes tall. Second, if you mark anywhere within a 10 hex range of another exit grid, even if there are no exit grids where you click, the surrounding exit grids will still be marked. Third, the quickest way to see if a new exit grid has been properly marked is to press F8 twice. But this only works for new green exit grids. For some reason, brown exit grids won't change color even if they're no longer pointing at the world map. Incidentally, this is also the easy way to set an exit grid to point to the world map, and that's probably the best segue I can think of as we move into world map exit grids, also known as brown exit grids. Setting a green grid to point to the world map is easy. Once you lay it out, press F8 twice, and the green grid will turn brown, pointing it to the world map. The same thing can be achieved by setting the exit grid data to -1, -1, 0, and 0, which is the default on startup anyway, and then just marking the grid. As long as you've added your new map to the MAPS.TXT file and saved it, you have to remember to save it, you should be able to use a brown exit grid, but first you need to save the map as well with the new exit grid data, then reload it. And after making changes to MAPS.TXT, you will have to restart the mapper before those changes will go into effect. The same thing applies to the game. Either way, as long as you have the map saved and the MAPS.TXT file saved with your new entry on it, you can just press F8, go into game mode, and then run over to test the exit grid. If you press escape, the mapper will put you into a blank map, but if you press F8 to go out of game mode, it'll put you back on your base map. At this point, after pressing escape to go into the blank map, you press F8 again, it will automatically crash the mapper. So be careful with that. Yes, it's true, the mapper is buggy, and exit grids seem to be its weakest point. Another consistent bug is that the world map exit grids will work the first time you press F8 in the mapper after loading a map, but using a world map exit grid after exiting and then re-entering game mode will cause the mapper to crash every single time if it doesn't crash immediately on re-entering game mode. Reopening the map after closing game mode seems to help prevent this from happening the next time you open game mode, but either way you only have one chance before you have to reload the map to prevent it from crashing again. Thankfully the game itself isn't nearly as crash prone, and the exit grid should work a bit more consistently, and this is probably the best way to test it and probably any other script in the game as you're trying to make it.
War never changes.
But once you hit the world map, you'll notice that the town circle is marked as Arroyo, and when you enter it, you spawn at the Arroyo Bridge and your map is nowhere to be seen. To get your new map to show up on the world map, we have to edit the CITY.TXT file located back in the Fallout 2 /data/data folder. Just like with maps.txt, let's scroll down to the bottom and add another entry by copying the format of the last entry on the list. Also like maps.txt, the area numbers need to be sequential. Skipping a number will cause the mapper and the game to ignore any new entries, leaving your map unlisted in the game engine. So for my map, it's going to be area number 49. As far as I'm able to tell, there are 5 entries that need to be here if you want your town map to appear on the world map, otherwise it will be permanently invisible. The first entry, area name, is the same as the lookup name from maps.txt, which we wrote down earlier. You can just copy paste this if you want, or you can write it out yourself, whatever you feel like. The second entry is the world position, and world POS is the position on the world map you want your town to appear at. The 2 numbers are your X and Y coordinates for where you want the town circle to appear on the world map. An easy way to check this is to plant your new map circle next to the Arroyo circle. And if you scroll up to the top, you can see the Arroyo circle has a world position of 184, 133, which makes a good spot to test your new map at 200, 150. Start state sets the green circle as visible or invisible on the world map. Setting it to on makes the circle visible when you start the game, like Klamath or the Den. Setting it to off will make it invisible at the start of a new game, like Vault 13 or the Toxic Caves, which need the player to trigger a script to make them visible. So I'm going to set mine to on because I want to be able to see it and troubleshoot it. Size is the size of the circle you want to represent your town. Medium is the same size as Arroyo, large is the same size as a Klamath, and small is the same size as the Toxic Caves or any special encounter. I'm going to go ahead and set mine to large. And finally, Town Map Art IDX uses a line number to reference a list of images stored in interface.lst, a text file hidden in the master.dat file. I'll cover adding new town art in a separate video. For now, you can leave this to -1 for no art, or you could be like me and just type in a random number. Alrighty, we've added the absolutely minimum necessary lines to get our new map to show up as a green circle on the world map. So let's save this file and test it out. But don't close it yet, because we're still going to need it. This should work in both the mapper and in-game. Start a new game or load the map in the mapper, press F8 to go into game mode, and walk on the exit grid. If everything works correctly, you should see your map circle right next to the Arroyo circle when you hit the world map. Several things you might not notice right away. First, there isn't any entry on the map list for your map. There is one for Arroyo, but not for your map. Second, your map circle is named unknown, or possibly error. And finally, when you enter your new map, you'll be dropped on a completely empty, blank map screen. Okay, this clearly isn't the way it's supposed to work. So back to CITY.TXT, like I said, we're going to come back here a couple times, to add 2 more lines to fix 2 of these problems. Town Map Label Art IDX works exactly like Town Map Art IDX. It just refers to a line number in the interface.lst file, which itself refers to an image hidden in the master.dat file. Again, I'll cover this in detail in another video. For now, the town labels are listed from number 368 to 387 if you want to use one of them. Well, -1 will leave the name blank, and I'm going to put in a random number to see what we get. And this last line is absolutely necessary, and you have to be very careful about it. Entrance 0. Entrance 0. Now, this is a big one, with 7 different switches built into it, separated by commas. If you scroll up to the top again, there's actually a brief description of what the switches do. Starting state, X position, Y position, map index, elevation, tile number, and orientation. Now, just to be clear, these are all only for the town map screen, not for the world map or anything else. They're just for the town map screen. Your start state, the first entry on the list, currently set to on, is actually the start state for those little triangles on the town map that represent which section of town you're trying to get to. The start state for entrance 0 will always be on, regardless of how you set this, but entrance 1, entrance 2, and so on can each be turned on or off individually to hide them as entrances. Although by default, the keyboard numbers are also shortcuts to these entrances anyway, so you can get to them even if they aren't listed, just like that space shuttle interior in San Fran. X position, Y position. These X and Y coordinates are also for those little triangles. They are center points for where they're supposed to show up on the town map art. The coordinates are measured starting from the top left corner of the town map screen, and the maximum for X is 615, and the maximum for Y is 467. If you go over this amount in either direction, the game will just drop you back onto a blank map exactly the same as before. So it will basically break everything you're trying to do. I'm going to go ahead and put mine somewhere in the middle. We'll call it 200, 200. The map index is the lookup name for the map you want the player to spawn in on. It can be the same as your new map, or it can be any other map in the MAPS.TXT file. Basically, we're creating a bunch of links to a collection of maps that we're calling a town. Because I want it to spawn in on my new map, I'm going to use my new map lookup name, Quantum's Map. Your elevation for this entrance is the map level you want them to appear on. The tile number for this entrance is the hex number for the spawn location. And the last one is the orientation, and is exactly the same as the rotation number from earlier on the taskbar. For those last 3, if you leave the elevation and the tile number as -1, they'll default to whatever you set as the start hex in the mapper, which is what I'm going to set mine to for now. And in case you're looking for more detail, the link to the wiki on the CITY.TXT file should be in the description if it doesn't appear in the corner up here. Okay, let's go ahead and test these out for a minute. Now you do have to enter the map twice, because by default it will spawn you at entrance 0, just like the regular game does, and bypass the map screen. So it turns out you have to be careful what background art you use. Some of these psychedelic ones look cool. This is the help screen, by the way, for the actual game. If you press F1, you'll see this, only it won't be in psychedelic colors, it'll be in normal. But they crash if you use them. Here's my little triangle, and you can see it crashed. But there are other built-in pieces of artwork that work fine. For instance, here's Mingan's face, one of the default portraits for a pre-built character. And let's try and get that little triangle to just hang out of his nose. That'd be really cool. So right now we're at 200, 200. So let's go ahead and move this up about 50. Let's see how it goes. So let's go 200, 150. One important note I just figured out, if you change anything here, you have to exit and restart the game in order to get it to reread this file. So a little bit of extra work there, sadly. Perfect. Now, let's add a second entrance to this map. I'm going to put the triangle for this entrance right next to the first at 180, 150 and point it to the same map, but change the level. So level 2 on my map would be a 1 on this line. And finally, I have a prepared hex number I'll drop the player on. 27295. Rotation 0 again. Save that. He's got boogers hanging out of his nose. Sadly, I don't know of any way to skip having to re-enter the map twice in-game in order to get the town map screen to show up, but it doesn't take too long if you set the speed in SFAL to something a little faster than average. If this setting is new to you, I made a video explaining it, link in the description if it doesn't pop up here. Okay, we've got the green map circle working as best we can. Give or take the name tag and the map art, har har har. The last thing to make this complete is to fix the town name attached to the green circle. This one requires a new file from the master.dat file. So let's load up the Data Explorer. Go ahead and find our master.dat file. And down here at the very bottom under text/English/game, we're looking for MAP.MSG right here. Right-click it and select Extract Selected Files to your Fallout 2/data folder. You click OK. If it extracts correctly, then you should have a copy of MAP.MSG in the Fallout 2/data/text/English/game folder. Open this file with a text editor, and be careful because Microsoft Outlook by default is set to open the file, and it will crash if you try to use it and send you an error code, so don't do that. Okay, so we've got the map.msg file open in Notepad. Just like the previous two, scroll down to the bottom and add one more entry, copying the previous entry. And just like the previous two, you need your numbers to be sequential and not overlap. So this will be 1549, and the name you put here will be the name that appears underneath the green circle in the world map. So I'm just going to call mine Quantum Map. Now, before we save and close map.msg, there is one other section we should add an entry to, though it's not strictly necessary. Right above the short city names list, there is a city elevation names list that puts an identifying name on the auto map when you open it up in the Pip-boy. Each map level gets its own name, which will appear at the bottom of the auto map when you open it on that level. So for me, I'm going to put number 151. This is going to be Quantum's first map. And this will be 653, 654, and 655. And the names will be, the bottom level is my Mantis fight, the middle level is my Deathclaw home, and the top level is just a test area right now. Let's go ahead and save this and test it out. Quantum Map shows up just fine. If we take a look at our auto map, we have Quantum Map and Test. Quantum Map is the overarching map name, and Test is the level that I'm on. But we can also check out level 2, because I have that set up. We take a look here, and we have Deathclaw home. Voila, it worked. Yay. And speaking of auto map, there's one more thing you can add to complete your exit grid, and that's the auto map markers. Listed as number 48 in the scenery category, you have to set toggle block object view to on before you can see them on the map. As you can see, they disappear when toggle block object view is turned off. Just lay them out in a line. They show up as tan-colored in the Pip-boy auto map when in-game, and are supposed to help identify exit grids for players who use the auto map. Okay. Finally, that is literally everything that I know about exit grids and how to set them up so far. This has got to be one of the most ridiculously complicated things that I've had to set up when modding my game. And you should be careful pressing F8 and using game mode in the mapper. Doing it more than once will cause the mapper to crash on exit grids, sometimes just crash immediately and sometimes just randomly. There are a few specific crashes that I've run into, so you should expect them too. If you place a new exit grid on an unsaved map and immediately press F8 to enter game mode, the exit grid will stay green but still take you to the world map. But if you place a new exit grid on an unsaved map and press F8 to enter game mode, then press F8 again to exit game mode, then F8 a third time to re-enter game mode, the exit grid will cause it to crash. But this is also exactly what happens when you do properly define the map in all system files, so just be forewarned, you should either test exit grids the first time you enter game mode, otherwise it will crash, or you should just save the map and run the game to test it. In fact, just testing the map in-game is probably the best way to do it, and is generally faster for most exit grids anyway. And one more detail, there is no easy way to check where the exit grids are pointing to after you set them, so you'll have to write it down or make some sort of notation on your own somehow. The most reliable way I've found to get world map exit grids to work has been to define them in all three files: MAPS.TXT, CITY.TXT, and MAP.MSG. And once again, there should be a link to the wiki instructions in the description if they don't appear in the corner here. Thank you for watching this to the end. If you got this far and this was useful for you, please leave a like in the hopes that we help get other people into modding Fallout 2. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the buggier systems in the mapper, because this can cause a lot of crashes and headaches if you don't know what to expect. To close this out, check out this little project I made, a set of exit grids that spawn you right next to them whenever you walk on them. I call it the Invisible Maze. And as I was editing this, I realized that was a terrible name. Nothing's invisible. Whatever I end up calling it, there is a little pathway hidden in the exit grids. I've marked it with ammo crates, but if you take those away, the exit grids are placed so they hide the path. And I also marked the path with the exit grid markers so it shows up in the Pip-boy map screen for anybody clever enough to check. I made this by placing a bunch of exit grids far enough away from my maze spots so that marking them didn't accidentally mark my maze at the same time. Then I set the exit grid data for one exit grid hex, marked all the far exit grids, and moving a single exit grid at a time to the spot next to where I set the exit grid data, and simply doing this over and over and over. So what happens is, whenever you walk onto an exit grid, it will spawn you 2 hexes away. This is not easy to do, this is very time intensive and fairly painstaking, but it might be worth it if you wanted to impress somebody who wanted to see something new in Fallout 2. And that's really what I want to do, is just make something new in Fallout 2. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I can't wait to see what awesome stuff you guys come up with for mods for Fallout 2. Easter Bunny würde für 5 Trefferpunkte getroffen. Alright, does he attack back? Oh, he does attack back, but he doesn't have any animation. Sniff my balls, Yammer! Oh shit, he actually had a death animation. Nice. Und ist tot.